My name is Wayne Catalano. I've been in this racing business for about 50 years. Twydil X been great for me. I would recommend it because it works on my horses and it works on bad bleeders. And I've seen the results. I'm a firm believer in stuff that works.
Hi everyone, David Aragona here with Craig Milkowski, and we are taking a look at the feature race of Friday's Breeders' Cup card at Del Mar, Race 9, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, the race that often decides who is going to be the early favorite for next year's Classics. And as we throw up the field for this race, Craig, this year we've got a classic East versus West clash, and also an inside versus outside clash, as Jack Christopher, the East Coast hope, drew a nice post down towards the rail, not so for Corniche and Bob Baffert, the top West Coast hope. He is all the way on the outside in post 12.
Yeah, I saw when I was watching the draw, some people said there was a gasp when Jack Christopher got the rail, like it was a bad thing. I don't think you could really ask for a better post. And as you say with Corniche, you probably couldn't ask for a worse post. He's going to need some luck from out there, some horses to take back. But it definitely sets up an interesting pace scenario.
And speaking of that pace scenario, let's get right into the Timeform US pace projector, because both of these top two contenders, they have plenty of early speed. They've both shown that in their prior races. And Jack Christopher, he's shown on the front end here, Craig, stretching out from the one-turn mile last time, likely to show speed from the inside. I think given that draw, Jose Ortiz is almost committed to having to show some aggression from the inside. But he showed in the Champagne, he's not a horse that necessarily needs the lead. And Corniche, Mike Smith is going to have to be aggressive to try to get him over from that outside post.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The reason Jack Christopher's shown in front is just because he's coming out of some really fast races. They both had red fractions, including the sprint where he was just off the lead. He was able to sit a length and a half to a length off most of the race last time, but make no doubt about it, he was going very fast and faster than any of the other horses in this race have run. So I think he has to go from the rail. Maybe if Corniche is super aggressive, he will be able to outrun him and get to the front if Mike Smith encourages him enough. But I do think Jack Christopher needs to make sure to clear the rest and get himself a good position headed into that turn.
And we do have that fast pace flag, but a lot of that is dependent on the other two Bob Baffert horses, who I think we should talk about in regard to the pace projector, Barossa and Pinehurst, because all three of Bob Baffert's runners in this race have the same running style. They like to be up front. Something's going to have to give, and Bob often gives some instructions to his jockeys to kind of make them know that they shouldn't tangle on the front end, so we'll see how that all plays out. But it's just worth noting that the two other Bob Baffert runners, Barossa and Pinehurst, they're going to have a major impact on how the pace of this race does shake out. Craig, let's start the conversation among the contenders with that Champagne winner, Jack Christopher, who is breaking from the rail here, and he's just been perfect in his two career starts. Looking at his PPs, he was really impressive winning that Champagne last time with a 1:23 Timeform US speed figure. That's following the 1:16 that he got in his career debut, and that just makes him the fastest two-year-old in the land right now.
Yeah, it makes him the fastest two-year-old in a lot of years, probably the vast majority that I can remember. You don't see a lot of 120-plus Timeform US speed figures from two-year-olds, especially before the Breeders' Cup. Sometimes maybe after in that Futurity at Los Al or the Remsen. There are some bigger races to come, but not this early. So it was a monster performance. He backed up what we saw from him the first time out when he won his maiden race with all the hype that day, and just showed it was no fluke whatsoever.
Yeah, and let's take a look at that Champagne last time, because we've actually got two major contenders coming out of that race. Jack Christopher is that chestnut with the big white face who's taking over on the lead right now. But also check out Command Performance, who's the gray closing on the outside. He finishes really gamely to be second to Jack Christopher here. Now, just based on this race alone, Craig, I think Jack Christopher ran the better race, as the Timeform US speed figures indicate. He was making a move into the teeth of that fast pace with Gunite, put that foe away, and Command Performance just kind of picking up the pieces at the end. But the stretch out around two turns, that could be somewhat of an equalizer with Command Performance.
Yeah, it could certainly change things a bit. There's no doubt he was running at the end and was definitely cutting into that gap that Jack Christopher had opened up. The race was so fast that he's a clear second best horse in this race on the Timeform US speed figures. And with an expected fast pace up front, I definitely think he has a shot in here.
I think it's generally accepted that he's going to appreciate the stretch out to 2 turns being by Union Rags, that Belmont Stakes winner, out of a dam that's by Tappet. So plenty of stamina there just up front in the pedigree for Command Performance. Not so much for Jack Christopher, who, you know, he's by Munnings, who really is more of a sprinter miler sire on the dam side. Jack Christopher, the dam, is a half sister to Street Boss. So a lot of sprint and mile influences there. It's possible that Jack Christopher is just the best horse in the race. He's going to win this on talent, but I'm not going to be surprised if Command Performance gets a lot closer to him on this occasion. Craig, the other major contender in this race is that West Coast Hope Corniche, breaking from the far outside post. Let's take a look at his victory last time out when he did answer the 2-turn test in the American Pharoah at Santa Anita. Had a pretty easy trip on the lead, but he does finish off this race and shows that he can get the distance.
Yeah, he had things to himself on the front end. I believe it was a Bob Baffert horse chasing him home, so not sure how much competition that really was. But he's run matching 108 Timeform US speed figures in his 2 starts. He's done everything right. And we've mentioned before on some of our various shows, though, Bob Baffert is no slouch at getting horses to win first time out. It doesn't always mean they're fully cranked. So it wouldn't surprise me if this horse had more in him. I doubt that 108 is his top. I just really worry about this post position and the prospect of dueling with Jack Christopher, or having to outrun him to get the lead.
Yeah, I feel like we don't yet know what this horse is. He was so impressive in that debut at Del Mar, and you could see he got a 1:16 final time rating for that race. So obviously that was knocked down a little bit because of the very slow pace. But I mean, he just kicked into another gear in the final 1/8 of a mile of that race and came home so fast to go from a 95 penultimate rating up to a 1:16 final time rating. And most horses like that, you know, they come back and they're not ones that stretch out, but he had no problem handling the stretch out in his next start. So we'll see what we get from him here. He does have a big turf pedigree on the dam side. I'm sometimes skeptical of horses like that going further in distance or handling tougher competition on the dirt, but he's a really beautiful mover. I think this horse has a lot of ability. Just like you, Craig, I wonder what kind of trip he's going to pull in this race. And he's not the only Bob Baffert runner in here, because he's got 2 others, and they both are contenders. Let's take a look at the last out victory of Pinehurst, his other Grade 1 winner in this race. He won the Grade 1 Del Mar Futurity last time, going 7 furlongs, but Pinehurst is one that's going to have to show that he can get the distance, because he's never run farther than that 7 furlongs.
Yeah, he's never run further, and he's also never really run a particularly fast race. He hasn't hit the triple-digit mark. The favorite in that Del Mar Futurity, Murray, who was another Bob Baffert trained horse, just didn't show up. And he kind of inherited the lead and was able to win what I would say was a very weak rendition of that race.
Yeah, watching this horse run, I've got some questions about how far he wants to go, and I agree with you. I don't think that was the toughest edition of the Del Mar Futurity, and he's got a lot to prove as he's stepping up in class and stretching out in distance here. Though I think we're both a little bit more interested in arguably Bob Baffert's 3rd stringer, and that's Barossa, who's coming out of a maiden race at Santa Anita last time. But let's take a look at his past performances, because that 1:10 Timeform US speed figure that he got looks pretty legitimate, and that makes him a stakes level horse stepping up into this Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
Yeah, it does. He certainly appreciated the 2 turns, especially the second time out. He wasn't able to handle Oviac Class, who's also in this race first time, but he looked like a new horse that second time going the mile. And I think that 1:10 is totally legit. Hadn't been a lot of horses run back, but one horse did run back on turf and basically matched his speed figure from that day. So I don't think there was anything fluky about that 1:10. And unlike some horses in here, he's proven he can come from at least a little bit off the pace. He was able to make up a position, or basically ran evenly in his first race while off the pace. And he was able to, even though he was close up, he did sit a little bit off the lead last time. I suspect he'll be more like the pace projector shows him back in 3rd and 4th, and he'll have to wear down the front runners. But that 1:10 puts him there with most of these horses.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you about the tactics on this horse. I think of the 3 Bob Baffert runners, he's the one with the most versatility and the one that they're likely to get least aggressive with, maybe wrangle him back into that 4th or 5th position early. But I like that last race from him, that runner up there. He also looks like he's pretty talented, and Barossa showed some real grit to forge past him at the end of that race based on his pedigree, especially on the dam side. He's bred to get even better with that distance. So I think he's an interesting horse stepping up into the race. Not sure that I really view him as a win candidate, but I think he might be able to get a big piece of this, because some of the others that are going to take money as, you know, the second string, I'm just not sure that I really trust them. A horse that's a bit of a wild card in this race, Craig, is the Japanese Invader, the number 2 Jasper Great. And let's take a look at his one start at Hanshin Racecourse over in Japan. This was as visually impressive a maiden victory as we're going to get, but was it just visually impressive? We really don't know what he was facing in this race over in Japan.
No, we don't. We don't get a time form rating, at least not yet. I don't think we get them for maiden races. They only do like graded races in Japan. The one thing that really stuck out at me was this race was at 1 1/8 miles. We've had very few, if any, 2-year-olds go 1 1/8 miles here. If they did, it was probably on the turf. So impressive. He's definitely a wild card. He's the kind of horse, I guess, if you're playing a vertical or a horizontal bet and you're looking for a wild card, he'd be the one to throw in. He certainly hadn't done anything wrong. His sire could certainly run, though he was a little bit of a late bloomer and arrogant, but not much to say about this other than watch the replay, and it is pretty jaw-dropping. I just wish we had a better feel for a horse like this on a numerical scale.
Yeah, wild card is definitely the term for a horse like this. And even though he's shipping in from Japan, he has a totally American pedigree, as you were pointing out. He's by Aragate, who has been somewhat of a disappointment as a sire so far. But like you said, maybe his progeny will mature later and want to go longer. And on the dam side, just a huge pedigree for Jasper Great. He's a half-brother to Power Broker, who I believe won the Grade 1 Haskell. The dam's a half to Miss Shop, multiple Grade 1 winner, and Trap Shot. So really strong American pedigree on this horse. You know, if you were making speed figures for that day at Hanshin, I think this might be a horse that we're not that interested in, because I did look up the race card from that day, and there were actually 2 divisions of that 1 1/8 miles race, and this was actually the slower one by 3/5 of a second, even though he won by 10 lengths. So I wonder about the quality of what was behind it, but he definitely is an interesting horse coming into this race, just because there's a real disparity in quality, I think, from the top of this Breeders' Cup Juvenile down to the bottom. A lot of filler among this 12-horse field. And let's throw up our picks for this race, Craig, and I think it's really no surprise that we landed on similar pages here. I went with the favorite, the number 1, Jack Christopher. I've just been so impressed with his races. As you said, my confidence is buoyed by that number 1 post position. I think he's going to work out the right trip, getting an aggressive ride from the inside. And I'm hopeful he can get the distance, but I just think he might be able to win this race on talent. I'm not at all against the horse that you put on top, though, Command Performance.
Yeah, I could have went either way. If we were listing horses by who we think's the most likely winner, I'd probably have Jack Christopher up there. But I do think Corniche is going to make things a little tough on Jack Christopher. I don't think it's going to be an easy trip. I do have a little concerns about the breeding. So I think I'm going to get a little more value on Command Performance. I like the way he finished off that Champagne, and he should handle the 2 turns. The 10 post isn't any great shakes, but he is a bit of a closer, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So we agree on the top 2. We both like the other Bob Baffert in third, and I threw the Japanese horse in as my wild card.
Yeah, definitely an interesting matchup in this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Race 9 at Del Mar on Saturday. That's a look at this race, the future race at Del Mar on this Breeders' Cup Friday card. Good luck if you're playing this weekend.